I sold my grandmother's antique engagement ring this morning to pay for a private investigator. And as I sit here in this sterile clinic waiting room, I realize I'm the only one here who isn't smiling. The weight of the secret is a physical pressure in my chest, a stone that sinks deeper every time the doctor mentions the word healthy. How can anything be healthy when the foundation is rotting? My husband, Caspian, thinks I'm at a routine checkup alone because he's buried in a merger. He's buried in something, all right, but it isn't work. The moral trap I'm caught in is suffocating. Do I tell him I know everything now while our child is just a flickering heartbeat on a monitor? Or do I wait until I've drained our joint accounts to ensure he can never touch us again? Some would call it theft. I call it an inheritance for a child who deserves a father who isn't a ghost. Caspian has always been a man of precision. He likes his coffee at exactly 160 degrees, his shirts pressed with sharp pleats, and his lies delivered with a steady gaze. But 3 weeks ago, the precision slipped. A dry cleaning receipt for a silk scarf I've never owned was the first crack. Then came the late-night conference calls where his voice would drop to a low, melodic hum I hadn't heard in years. I actually thought he was planning a surprise for the baby's arrival. I was so blinded by the glow of the sonogram that I missed the shadow standing right behind me. The investigator, a man named Kalen with coffee-stained teeth, didn't even need a week. He handed me a manila envelope yesterday in a crowded park. Inside weren't just photos of Caspian with another woman, they were photos of Caspian at a playground with that woman and a toddler who has the exact same shock of dark hair as my husband. He didn't just have an affair, he had a secondary life, a pre-packaged family he'd been maintaining for 3 years while telling me we weren't ready for kids. The nurse calls my name. Sienna, ready to see the little one? I stand up, my knees shaking. My voice is steady, but my soul is screaming. I have to walk into that room, look at the screen, and pretend that the man I'm calling afterward isn't a stranger. The debate rages in my head. If I leave him now, I'm the woman who broke a home. If I stay, I'm the woman living in a museum of lies. Which version of me is better for the baby? I sat on the edge of the examination table, the crinkle of the sanitary paper sounding like a forest fire in the quiet room. Dr. Vane entered with a practiced warm smile, oblivious to the fact that my world had ended 24 hours ago in a park. As she squeezed the cold gel onto my stomach, I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots to keep from screaming. "There we go," she whispered, turning the monitor toward me. "Look at that strong rhythm." On the screen, a tiny flicker pulsed. It was a life, a real, innocent life that had no idea its father was currently buying groceries for a woman named Isolde in a townhouse 40 miles away. I looked at the flickering light and felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it burned. This child would never know the instability of a lie. I would burn the world down before I let them inherit Caspian's cowardice. "Is the father coming today?" Dr. Vane asked, her eyes moving between the screen and my face. "He couldn't make it. Work is demanding." The nurse nodded, but I saw the pity in her eyes. She'd seen this before. The lonely mothers, the absent fathers. But she hadn't seen a mother like me. I wasn't just a victim, I was the architect of his downfall. By the time I left the clinic, the plan was fully formed. I wouldn't confront him in a fit of rage. I wouldn't give him the chance to pack his things and hide his assets. I would be the perfect, glowing wife for exactly 48 more hours. Long enough to move the pieces on the board. I walked to my car, the mid-afternoon sun feeling too bright, too cheerful. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Kalen had given me. I need the records of the secondary account. The one he uses for the townhouse lease. I need the login, Kalen, whatever the cost. "It's risky, Sienna. That's bank fraud if you're not careful." "It's my name on the secondary signature line," I replied, remembering the emergency papers Caspian had me sign 2 years ago. He thought I was too distracted by our first failed IVF round to read the fine print. He was wrong. I'm not stealing. I'm withdrawing my consent. Standing there in that cold clinic kitchen, the silence was louder than her scream. I watched the water boil for a tea I had no intention of drinking, staring at the ultrasound photo pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tiny lemon. Caspian walked in 5 minutes later, smelling of expensive cologne and the faint, unmistakable scent of wood smoke, the kind you only get from sitting near an outdoor fire pit. There are no fire pits at his office. "How was the appointment, Sienna?" he asked, crossing the room to kiss my forehead. "Fine," I whispered. "The heart is strong. Everything is progressing exactly as it should." He beamed. It was a beautiful, convincing beam. "That's my boy, or girl, whatever it is, they're clearly a fighter like their mom." I watched him move around our kitchen. The kitchen I designed, the one we paid for with a bonus he told me he earned for overtime. Now I know that overtime was spent at a townhouse across the city, playing house with Isolde. I wondered if he used the same words with her. Did he tell her she was a fighter too? "You seem quiet," he said, pausing with a glass of water halfway to his lips. "Just tired," I lied. "The doctor said I need to start thinking about the long term, financial security, setting up a trust." I watched his eyes. For a split second, a flicker of panic crossed his face, just a micro-expression, before the mask slid back into place. "Of course, we'll sit down with the advisor next month." "I think we should do it sooner," I said, my voice tightening. "I want to move some of the savings into a private account for the baby's education. Today." He laughed, a warm paternal sound that made my skin crawl. "Sienna, love, there's no rush. Let's just enjoy the moment." In that moment, I realized the moral weight of what I was about to do. I had the login credentials for his offshore account. I knew he'd been funneling money there to hide it from both me and, presumably, Isolde. If I took it, I wasn't just taking his money, I was taking his exit strategy. I was trapping him in the very life he chose to hedge against. Was it revenge? Or was it justice for the years he stole from me? I stayed up late that night, the blue light of my laptop screen reflecting in my eyes. Caspian was asleep, snoring softly, his arm draped over the spot where my stomach would soon grow too large for him to ignore. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Every click of the mouse felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I saw the transfers to management services, the code name for Isolde's rent. I saw the jewelry purchases from stores I'd never stepped foot in. Thousands of dollars, a fortune built on the silence of a wife he thought was too weak to check. I began the transfer process. It wasn't a single move. It was a series of small, calculated ripples. I shifted the primary mortgage responsibility to his individual line, citing his higher income in the digital paperwork. I moved the liquid assets to a trust held in my maiden name. I wasn't leaving him with nothing. I was leaving him with the debt of the life he chose. The next morning, Caspian was extra attentive. He made breakfast. Avocado toast and poached eggs, just the way I liked them before the morning sickness kicked in. He talked about names. He suggested Elian if it was a boy. I almost choked on my water. That was the name of the toddler in the photo. He wanted to name our child after the son he already had with another woman. The level of depravity was breathtaking. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that some people don't have a soul. They just have a series of mirrors they hold up to reflect whatever you want to see. "What do you think of Elian?" he asked, his eyes bright with a feigned excitement. "It's a strong name, Caspian. Very memorable." I left the house shortly after, claiming I had a prenatal yoga class. Instead, I drove to the address Kaylin had provided. I parked 3 houses down and waited. The townhouse was charming. It had a red door and a small garden filled with marigolds. At 10:30 a.m., the door opened. Caspian stepped out, but he wasn't wearing his suit. He was in a soft hoodie and jeans. He reached back and lifted a small boy into the air while spinning him around while a woman with blonde hair laughed from the doorway. I watched them. They looked like a commercial for a happy life. My heart didn't break. It turned to ice. I picked up my phone and took a single photo of the scene, the visual anchor for my new reality. The rain was drumming against the window of the nursery I had spent the afternoon painting a soft, deceptive blue. I sat on the floor, surrounded by half-assembled furniture, when my phone vibrated. It was a text from Kalen. "He's there now, 42nd and Oak. He just bought a tricycle." The nursery felt like a cage. I looked at the crib, the one Caspian insisted on buying because it was the safest on the market. The irony was a physical blow. He wanted a safe cage for his child, while he roamed free in the tall grass of his lies. I didn't call him. I didn't scream. I logged into the bank portal one last time. My fingers hovered over the final transfer button. I know people will say I'm being cold. They'll say that by emptying these accounts, I'm no better than he is, that I'm hurting the other child too. But Caspian didn't just lie. He built a world where I didn't exist. If I leave him with nothing, I'm simply returning him to the vacuum he created for me. A man who can buy 2 tricycles while his wife is at home mourning a marriage that never existed doesn't deserve the luxury of a safety net. I'm not stealing. I'm reclaiming the tax he owes for my wasted youth. If his other family suffers, that is his sin to carry, not mine. I hit the button. $240,000 disappeared from his hidden account into an untraceable trust. The front door opened. "Sienna, I'm home. I brought takeout from that Thai place you love." I walked to the top of the stairs. He was standing in the foyer, looking up at me, holding a brown paper bag. He looked so normal, like a husband, like a father. "Caspian," I said, my voice echoing in the hallway. "Who is the tricycle for?" The bag slipped from his hand. The smell of peanut sauce and ginger filled the air, a cloying, sweet scent that I knew would haunt me forever. He didn't deny it. He didn't ask how I knew. He just sighed, his shoulders dropping. "Sienna, it's not what you think," he began, the classic opening line of a coward. "I think you have 3 minutes to get out of this house before I call the police and report a trespasser. Because as of 5 minutes ago, I filed the paperwork for the house. Since you forgot to sign the updated deed last year and I used my inheritance for the down payment, this is my house. And your hidden account, it's empty." His face went from pale to a deep, bruised purple. "You did what? That money, Sienna, that was for your other child?" I interrupted. "He'll have to find another way, just like mine will." Caspian took a step toward the stairs, his face contorting into something I didn't recognize. The precision was gone. The polished man was replaced by a cornered animal. "You can't do this," he hissed. "I worked for that money. I built this life." "You built 2 lives," I corrected, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. "And you can only afford 1. Since I'm the one with the legal claim to this roof and the signatures on the accounts, you're going to have to choose the one that doesn't include me." He laughed then, a harsh, jagged sound. "Well, you think you're so smart. Isolde knows about you. She's known for years. We were waiting for the right time to tell you. We were waiting for the inheritance to clear." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just him, it was both of them. They were vultures waiting for my grandmother's estate to settle so they could fly away together on my dime. "Well," I said, leaning over the railing, "guess the right time just passed. The inheritance is in the trust. The trust is locked. And you, Caspian, are late for dinner at the townhouse. I suggest you go before I decide to call Isolde and tell her exactly how much money you don't have anymore." He lunged for the stairs, but I held up my phone. The screen was already dialed to 911. One more step and I press call. I'll tell them a man I don't know is breaking into my home, and looking at you right now, I don't know you at all. He stopped. The silence in the foyer was heavy, thick with the smell of spilled Thai food and the death of a decade. He turned, grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, and walked out without looking back. Standing there in that cold kitchen, the silence was louder than her scream. Caspian was gone. He had left with a single suitcase and a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. He didn't cry for me. He didn't even cry for the baby. He cried for the money. That was the closure I needed. I sat in the rocking chair, the only piece of furniture fully assembled in the nursery. The house felt massive now, empty, but for the first time in years, the air felt clean. I put my hand on my stomach. The baby kicked, a sharp, rhythmic thud against my palm. "It's just us," I whispered into the dark. I spent the next few hours cleaning the foyer. I scrubbed the peanut sauce from the tile until the floor gleamed, the physical labor acting as a purge of the toxins Caspian had left behind. Every circular motion of the rag felt like I was erasing a year of gaslighting. I threw away the safest crib on the market and ordered a new one that I picked out, one that wasn't a gift from a liar. As the sun began to rise over the driveway, I realized it didn't matter. The money was safe, the house was quiet, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had dropped it myself. By 8 a.m., my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, confirmed that the temporary restraining order had been filed. My phone buzzed shortly after with a series of frantic, vitriolic texts from an unknown number. It was Isolde. She wasn't playing the part of the blissful second wife anymore. She was demanding to know where their money went. She called me a thief. She called me a monster for leaving a toddler without a college fund. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. There was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of guilt for the little boy, Elian. But then I remembered Caspian's face when he suggested that name for my child. They had been planning to build their happiness on the ruins of mine. If I had been the bigger person, I would be the one on the street right now, and they would be laughing in a house bought with my grandmother's ring. In this world, sometimes you have to be the villain in someone else's story just to be the hero in your own. I didn't reply. I sent a screenshot of her messages to Mr. Sterling and then blocked the number. I walked out to the backyard, where the old oak tree cast long, spindly shadows across the lawn. Caspian always hated this tree. He said it dropped too many leaves and ruined the aesthetic of the yard. He'd wanted to cut it down. I touched the rough bark, feeling the solid, unmoving strength of it. I sat on the porch as the neighborhood began to wake up. I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, walking her dog. She waved, her face full of the casual kindness of someone who doesn't know their world is about to change. I waved back, wondering if she'd noticed the absence of the charcoal gray sedan in the driveway. Around noon, a courier arrived. He handed me a legal envelope, Caspian's response. He wasn't going quietly. He was claiming emotional distress and contesting the trust. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but no fear. I had the photos. I had the bank statements showing the funneling of funds to management services. I had the receipt for a tricycle bought while I was at a high-risk pregnancy screening. Let him fight. Every day he spent in court was a day he wasn't spending with his perfect family. Every dollar he spent on a lawyer was a dollar he couldn't spend on Isolde. I had enough to outlast him. I had the one thing he lacked, the truth. I went back inside and started packing his remaining things into heavy-duty trash bags. I didn't fold them. I didn't care if they wrinkled. I found a stray cufflink under the dresser, real gold, engraved with his initials. I looked at it for a long moment, then walked to the kitchen and dropped it into the garbage disposal. Ch! The grinding sound was satisfying. The future was a blank page, and for the first time in my life, I was the only one holding the pen. I wasn't just Sienna, the betrayed wife. I was Sienna, the mother who had secured her child's future with the precision of a surgeon. I sat back down in the nursery, the light of the setting sun turning the blue walls into a deep, regal purple. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence. It wasn't the silence of loneliness anymore. It was the silence of peace.